Welcome to a very special episode of The Lawyer You Know After Dark. We've got a special episode with two of my favorite ladies. I got my wife, Whitney Tragos, my sister, Gina Misenhelder, on the show today. It's going to be something special, okay? They are Free Britney activists, as they like to be referenced as, and they were a part of something that happened last week at my house that worried me a bit. Made me think maybe Whitney needs to have a conservatorship set up for her, where her and about 15 of her friends had a Free Britney party where they watched the documentary that surrounds Britney Spears, her mental health struggles, her conservatorship, and her life. So at that party, they talked a lot about how it's possible that someone like Britney Spears, who can perform, who can make all this money, who can do all this stuff in her professional life, how she could possibly be under conservatorship. So they wanted to sit down today and talk about it. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to hit some legal aspects of it. We're going to just kind of talk through the documentary a little bit and talk about how it's possible that somebody like Britney Spears could be in this situation. Mm-hmm. So where do you guys want to start? Either one of you. Take it away.
Well, let's start with what is a conservatorship.
Okay, so they explain this in the documentary a little bit. So for anybody that wants to watch documentary, where did you watch it?
It's on Hulu.
Okay.
It's Framing Britney Spears.
Okay.
Is what it's called.
It's New York Times show. It's episode 6. I just rewatched it.
Oh, so it's like a New York Times doing a series of shows.
Yes.
And they're not all on Britney.
No.
Okay.
Just one on Britney.
All right. A conservatorship is simply put somebody that can't, for either a physical or mental reason, make their own life decisions and financial decisions on their own, meaning they basically lack legal capacity, which we'll talk about a ton throughout the episode to try to make you and everybody else understand what it means to lack legal capacity. But so what I thought was interesting that I haven't seen in the definition for a conservatorship in all of the places that it's defined, but in the documentary itself, it says that it's also someone that is highly susceptible to undue influence or fraud, which I think was one of the issues with Britney when they talk about one of those new managers that came in and was controlling her life, her finances, her house, and that kind of started the way.
So there's two different kinds of conservatorships. That's what it says on the documentary.
It says or.
Yes,
so
it's like a person's or yes.
So yes, but in order to have either, you still have to fit into that definition. So yeah, there's a conservatorship for a person, which means personal decisions, medical decisions, things like that, life decisions. Then there's one for financial, which is obviously all your financial decisions.
And Britney has both.
She has both.
Like she's, yeah.
Correct, which should tell you something. There's going to be a theme to what I think in this documentary, which may be different from the Free Britney activists. But yes, so that's what a conservatorship is. And it does say or in there. You have to either lack the mental or physical ability to make these decisions or undue influence. Are susceptible to fraud, which I thought was interesting that she put it as an or, which can be part of it. So, yeah. And it's different than just I can't balance my checkbook, or I'm stupid, or I'm immature, or I'm an 18-year-old that has all this money, because you have all these professional athletes, singers, performers that shouldn't really be in charge of millions of dollars, but they are, so it's different from that. It's not just I make bad decisions, I blow it on Ferraris, whatever. It's actually lacking the capacity.
And I think we might go over this later, but I think it was really interesting that one lady lawyer, that was Jamie's conservatorship lawyer, was saying she's never seen somebody get that reversed. She said every conservatorship she's been a part of, nobody's ever been able to reverse it.
Yes,
which
and
is
we will talk about that.
Interesting.
Yeah, we will talk about that in the future a little bit on how and if this could be reversed. But we'll save that because that's kind of going to be near the end of the conversation.
And if it's not just balancing your checkbook, or if it's not those like things that we see people do all the time, what is it? What is it that Britney has done that has warranted this conservatorship?
One of the reason why they wanted this was because she was giving away her money. She was like, I think it was to that random manager that she like met during her mental breakdown, and she just gave him access to her money, and he was taking it and she didn't realize it.
So the reason this stuff happens, right, is there's a breaking point. So there had to be a peak. It wasn't just one thing, right? The documentary shows her driving with her baby on her lap, shaving her head, banging the umbrella on the car of the paparazzi, screaming, cursing out the paparazzi. So as part of the party, all of the ladies dressed up like different Britney Spears, what do you call them, characters, or different points in her life and different outfits that she wore. And my sister dressed up like bald Britney Spears smashing an umbrella into a car. So
just to let you know how far she's come.
yeah, so
I support her.
So anyways, so that was one of the
tribute.
issues is she was having all this behavior for us to see in the public eye, right? Then there are medical records, medical reports. She's talking to doctors, to mental health specialists. And when you actually get a conservatorship, it's not just like you show up to court and you say, hey, I want this conservatorship. You have to file motions, you have to have medical reports, you have to have records, you have to have a hearing. A judge has to actually make the decision, and the burden is on the people that want the conservatorship. So there'll be different burdens as we talk about what can happen in this case. But before there is a conservatorship in place, the burden is on the people that want the conservatorship to prove that it's necessary. So she basically has the benefit of the doubt on her side prior to getting the conservatorship.
Do we know who, maybe I just don't remember, do we know who initially filed for that? Or who made it known that she needed one?
So you would think it would be her dad. I'm not positive, but I think it was her family is kind of what they said, and those close to her, probably her prior manager that she fired and then hired this guy. I'm sure it had something to do with it. And that's also another good point, is it is very normal for a family member to be the conservator. So that's not a weird thing that it was her dad. It's usually a spouse or a parent, because this happens a lot of times with serious brain injuries, Alzheimer's, when someone's in a coma, or suffers serious physical injury or cognitive injury, like a traumatic brain injury. That's when it normally happens. So it's funny that when everybody that explains and all the legal articles that explain conservatorships, they always talk about parent, spouse. That's who the conservators. They don't usually put it in all of the different language like that, but that's because it is normal for the parent to be the conservator. It's not weird that her dad came in, I should say.
I just feel like of all of the celebrity mental breakdowns we have witnessed, there have been so many horrible decisions. They have gone off the rails, drugs, you name it. There have been horrible decisions made by so many celebrities. Why? I don't understand. Was it that their family just didn't think to? It's hard for me to believe that this warrants a conservatorship. This behavior, what about this behavior really warrants a conservatorship? I just don't get it. That doesn't.
Yeah, I get.
It just doesn't click for me. It seems like an injustice.
I agree, and I think that and I know that you say that there was medical documents and everything, and there's an issue with her lawyer saying he wasn't able to see it. But also, we've seen, no matter which side you're on, we've seen in the election how media can sway just your thoughts and views on everything. And she basically became famous, and her rise to fame and her breakdown was all pre-social media. So she couldn't really tell, nobody knew her side of the story. So everybody could really fight that she was
I don't know if that has anything to do with it, because there's social media now and people are still saying that she's crying out for help and all this stuff. So,
but I'm saying other people that have had breakdowns are at least able to tell their side of the story or let people know they're sane.
We've had plenty of celebrities go into rehab and come back out and like Whitney's saying, seeing these supposed mental breakdowns in the public eye. I think there's so much more that you don't actually know that's happening with her case, and I think that is one of the reasons why she's not saying stuff on social media, because she knows what's going on and she knows that there's more, and that's the problem. And we'll get to, because I think that was an important issue that a lot of people asked about and wondered about. So there's a lawyer. So Britney her parents want to do this conservatorship. So she hires a lawyer to fight for her to not do the conservatorship. And that lawyer, who was hard to watch, gets on and says, she seems perfectly fine to me, and she wanted to hire me to represent her, and this is what she told me, and give all privileged information between him and his supposed client, and said, so we got to court, and I said, Judge, I think she's fine, and the judge was looking at a piece of paper. He said, I have something in my hand, this medical record, you can't see it, you can't be her lawyer, and he threw it down on the table, and I never saw, I don't know what's in those medical documents. So let's first talk about why the lawyer couldn't see those medical documents. It seems weird, right? He's her lawyer. He should be able to see those documents. Well, he's not her lawyer, because she doesn't have capacity to hire a lawyer. She can't even write a check at that point. Okay?
That just blows my mind.
But you have to think about it like, children. If a child, a 10-year-old kid had money and went to buy a car and signed a contract, and then we want to bring the car back and return it, they couldn't say, nope, he signed the contract. They have to give you the money back and take the car back, because children cannot do legally binding actions like signing a contract for buying a car. she is basically a child in this situation. She cannot legally enter into any of these contracts, and it's not that abnormal. So we have situations sometimes where people call us and they're like, my other lawyer tried to have me declared insane. He tried to say I was crazy. I want to hire a new lawyer. And we literally ask, one of the first questions we ask, which is really funny that it comes up with this, is we say, have you ever been ruled incompetent by a judge or a medical professional? And if they say yes to us, we say, we're really sorry, but there's nothing that we can do unless you send us documentation saying you're no longer incompetent. Okay? Mm-hmm. So once that happens, they cannot make those legal decisions anymore. And it's really different from like when you have a power of attorney or a medical surrogate or something like that, you know, and you do that before you go into surgery. So I'm deciding Whitney's my power of attorney, can make all these decisions for me. If God forbid something happens and I go into a coma or something bad happens in the surgery. Because at the time I'm signing that power of attorney over to you, I am competent. I have legal capacity. I can make that decision. Before she had her breakdown, if she would have said, I want my mom or my sister or this lawyer to be my power of attorney should anything happen to me, that's who it would have been. But the judge in the court has to try to determine what her decision would have been when she was competent as to who she would want to be her conservator, right? So that you can't take any decisions that she's making post being declared incompetent.
Okay.
Would her dad, does it matter that he had a problem too and he went to rehab? Like, how does he decided the best fit out of her mom and her dad? Like, why was nobody else fit?
I don't know why they chose her dad over her mom, but usually they try to make the best decision for the people they think are going to make the best decisions and care most about Britney, right? And I was talking to Whit about this, I think, when we were watching it, that maybe the dad volunteered because in Britney's situation, which is one of the things I think we're going to get to, is that her conservatorship is not easy and normal. Like, it takes a lot more time, a lot more energy because of how complex it is, how much money is going in and out of it, and the decisions that you have to make. So maybe the court was like, okay, Jamie Spears, you're gonna, sacrifice your life and now take care of this conservatorship for your daughter. You're the right person to do that, rather than the mom who didn't even go to New York with her when, she was going to be famous. Maybe they thought the mom wasn't able to do it. The fact that he had rehab in the past or drug abuse or alcohol abuse or whatever it was, it doesn't preclude him from being it. It still puts him at the front of the line if, again, he's legally competent at the time, which they go through. It's not just like they say, oh, Dad, you want to do it? Okay, it's over, especially if she was contesting it. And just because she wasn't able to pick her own lawyer and she got a court-appointed lawyer, she still could contest it through that court-appointed lawyer. It's not like the court-appointed lawyer just does whatever the other side wants to do. They still represent her. They still have the legal obligation to represent her and her interests. So if she really didn't want the dad too, they had to find somebody else. But again, she can't pick who she wants to be because she doesn't have capacity to do so.
On that note, you said she can't sign a check at this point. She can't hire her own lawyer. What can she do? Does she have control of anything? I mean, can they control when she leaves the house, if she shops online, what she posts on social media? Like, where does the conservatorship, are there any boundaries or?
So there are different specifications to every conservatorship. So she's probably allowed to make certain financial decisions under a certain amount. He can probably give her an allowance or something like that every month. They could probably do stuff like that. Yeah, she doesn't have to ask him every time she buys dinner. She doesn't have to ask him for stuff like that. But big financial decisions he has to be involved in. And it's actually interesting because he can't even make big financial decisions without approval from the court. So he can't sell her house or buy $1 million house without getting approval from the court, which was interesting because even how much he gets paid has to be approved by the court. He can't just take whatever money he wants. It has to be a reasonable fee. But part of the documentary talked about how he got 1.5% of her Vegas proceeds or something when she went to do that Vegas show. That had to be approved by the court. He couldn't just say, I want 1.5%. He had to prove why it was necessary for him to get 1.5%.
It was $1 million a week.
It's insane.
That's ridiculous. Insane. And I know, from past, I think she wasn't getting along with her mom during this time. That's why it wasn't her mom. I just remember that because her mom wrote this whole book. And
that's probably why her dad probably brought that book to court and was like, do you think this should be the person that's taking care of her?
I feel like Britney Spears, I don't know, but I feel like Britney Spears has to be the only person in a conservatorship that's making millions of dollars I mean, it just, I know. I don't
she has the capacity to remember every single line of her songs, dance, do a whole show every single night, but she's not She can't make decisions about
and she
travel.
can't. I'm sorry, but she can't decide to do that Vegas show on her own. Like her conservator would have to decide whether or not she can go perform.
So I think it has to be a combo decision. I don't think her conservator can force her like a slave
But he
to
has
go
to
do
say
that
it's
show.
okay.
I think she basically has to bring it to him saying, I want to do this show, and then he has to say okay.
Interesting.
That's how it would have to be.
Because she quit without telling
Right,
anyone.
and she can do that, right? She's not a slave. She's not, she's nothing like that. She just basically, it's for her mental health too. So I think that's a big part that's missing from all of this. Is yes, she can make a lot of money, but the point of this conservatorship is to keep her in a healthy place. So they can probably be like, it's going bad for you right now. You're working too much. Scale back. And yes, they are involved in how much she gets paid because she's not allowed to agree on how much she gets paid without involving them. And again, that could be a good thing because somebody could convince her she could be susceptible to undue influence like they talked about. And there are mental health experts that make these decisions and that are educated and experienced in making the decision as to what is necessary for an individual person. And she said at some point, I feel like I'm trapped with all these doctors and lawyers looking at me and talking to me all the time. That to me says there are doctors continually looking at her, trying to see how she's doing, evaluating her, and continually diagnosing her as incapable of doing these things and needing this conservatorship. Because if they thought it wasn't necessary, that's something they're going to put in a report. That's something her lawyer is going to use in court to try to get this overturned.
Maybe I'm a cynic, but I just think they're all on the payroll.
So, yeah, okay, and I'm sure that's one thing everybody thinks everybody's on the payroll, and maybe the lawyers are, as much as I'd hate to think it's possible. There's no way the judge is. There's just no way. That doesn't make any sense. And I'd be very surprised if all of the doctors were in on this because you'd be more famous and probably make more money if you were the doctor that freed Britney, that wrote the report, that said she was fine, let's get her out, let's free Britney together and really gung-ho about it. That would probably be worth more money. So I let's not forget also, one of the questions you had here that you're kind of going away from, but I'd like to get to these questions that you have, but is how did this happen to her? Well, one of the ways it happened to her is she ended up signing off on the conservatorship in 2008.
Yes. I heard, yeah.
So that's the problem, is the time to fight it was then. That was her best chance to win, and she signed off on it.
But she wasn't fit to hire her own lawyer or sign a check, but she could sign a conservatorship.
Correct.
How does that make any sense?
She realized that she needed it. I mean, that's the point.
If she doesn't have the mental capacity to hire her own lawyer,
So
because she just can't make a good decision.
She agreed with the lawyers, the doctors, the judge.
What do you
and
mean?
her family.
But how is that a
How do you
good
know
decision?
that she agreed with?
And
That's what
how
I'm saying.
could have been?
So here's the point. She was not the sole decision maker. That's the whole point. Is all of those people, all those professionals, thought that she needed one thing, and she eventually agreed with them. Would you agree if I tried to do a conservatorship for you right now?
No.
That's what I'm saying.
But
Like there is an element of that. I don't care what anybody did or said about me, including doctors and lawyers and judges. I would be like, no way. Prove it.
We
I'm
also
never
have
signing
to
it.
realize this was right after she had her second baby.
Correct.
We
I
talked
think
about
the
that
parenting thing had a
postpartum
big-
depression too.
I agree.
She couldn't in the custody. She was losing custody when she went crazy
She did
with
lose custody.
Yes,
which
when
I think
she-
is another important element to this.
And when she went with the umbrella and the guy caught her on film, that night she was at Federline's house trying to see her kids, and he
you gonna
wouldn't
say
even
Justin
let
Timberlake?
Kevin Federline's house trying to see her kids, and she went twice and he wouldn't let her in. That guy kept following her. So I mean,
I get
yes,
it.
she looked nuts, but
I get it, but that's also an important point that the mother of the children lost custody.
Yes.
Also very unusual. Very, very, very unusual, especially the one that has the most money and should be able to keep her kids, I would think, unless there was something going on, which there probably was. And I think that's one of the really sad things is watching the documentary, I said to Whit, it's obvious how this happened to her. It's so sad. Like 15 years old, she's going alone to New York City. She's a big star, sex symbol, whatever, like life's
and you
turned
can
upside
see
down.
every single interview they
I know.
ask her something about her
So
sexuality. It's like
inappropriate.
Oh my gosh, it
It's
was
terrible.
So
that
gross.
one
guy
guy,
wanted to talk about her breasts.
breasts.
The other guy, the old geezer, wanted to be her
My boyfriend, yeah,
It was
that-
so
I know.
weird. I was thinking that was only 2003.
And it literally looked like she was just fed to the wolves. Like she had no
Yes.
PR person
Yes.
stepping in and being like, excuse me, no.
Yeah.
Like we're not talking about that or that's not appropriate. Like
she-
it was mind blowing. The
That's
poor
the much
girl.
better conversation.
I felt like she was completely just bullied and literally abused by the media.
Yes,
like she got completely broken down. It was
and
horrible.
over again.
Yeah, it was horrible.
So yeah, I think that's the better conversation is, you know, her parents and guardians at that point just totally...
Yet her dad is her conservator. Yet her dad, hello. Like, none of that adds up.
Nobody is talking about that. Nobody's really talking about that.
Which is why it's frustrating.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, what the heck is going on? Like, again, it seems like an injustice. And I do not...
In so many different areas.
I just can't, I just cannot, make sense of it. You think that this is fair. Like, you think that this is fair treatment for her, for what we witnessed in the media, for what happened. You think that
So first off, you put down here, does the punishment fit the crime? Right?
Right.
So that's one thing that you put down that I wanted to address before we get to, is it fair? A conservatorship is absolutely not seen as or supposed to be punishment, right? Because what she did was not a crime. And this is where I would give you some leeway and agree with you guys that mental health treatment and rehabilitation in the United States kind of sucks. And it's really hard. And we have a bunch of mental health experts that we use as experts in cases, and we talk to them. Or you look at people that go to jail or prison with mental health issues, it's really sad. They come out worse 100 times out of 100, right? So that part is really bad. Like, I would think somebody like this, with all of her resources, you'd want to get her serious mental health treatment until she was okay, and then the goal should be to get her out of this conservatorship, right?
Yeah.
So I'm with you there, and it shouldn't be a punishment, and it shouldn't be seen as a crime, but I thought it was interesting that you asked the question like that. Now, is this fair? So there's two ways to answer that. The first way is, I would have to say that I trust that the lawyers and the doctors and the judges, like especially the judge saying, I'm looking at this medical record, you can't see it, right? I think that he's probably looking at a medical record that's much, much worse than anything we can imagine, that shows that she is seriously dangerous to herself or others, and she can be taken advantage of easily or whatever it may be. I'm not trying to be mean to her, but if you watch some of her social media videos, she does not look right.
Now. But
Okay, but I'm just saying, now then, multiple times throughout the last 12 years, she has done things that it would make you question her mental capacity. So maybe at this point they think she's been relatively okay. She hasn't gone to jail. She hasn't committed any crimes. She hasn't really had a huge mental breakdown in the last 12 years. Maybe this conservatorship is working for her. Maybe that's what the court sees. And sometimes judges and lawyers and doctors don't necessarily see the emotion and make the best decisions if it's necessary, with a family aspect, but I'm sure they're thinking about that. And that is part of it. But, I think it's probably fair, yes. And I think that whether accurate or not, they're probably looking at the results saying this is working well for her. This is working well for her. And she hasn't come out strongly saying otherwise. It's all indirect.
She's not allowed to.
That's what I'm
publicly.
saying.
Who says that? Who says she's not allowed to?
Well, that's what I'm wondering about this conservatorship. How much control do they have? Is she allowed?
I will tell you right now, in open court, when she has these hearings, there's nobody that can tell her she's not allowed to tell the judge what she wants to tell the judge. Now, maybe she can't post something on social media. Maybe she can't defame them. Maybe there's some contract or confidentiality or whatever. But in court, I can have a confidential document between me and somebody that's a settlement, and nobody can ever see this document. And when you go to court, you just show it to the judge, because the judge is included in that. And in all these documents, it says, unless ordered to by a court, unless the government tells you have to, say what happened in this document. So she's allowed to tell the court whatever she wants.
Okay. So her mental issues, she was perfectly fine. And then she got married. She had babies. She lost custody. Then this Sam guy comes into the picture, and he's accused of slipping drugs into her drinks, smashing up pills and putting them in so that he can take control of some of her money. How is that a known fact from her family, but nobody did anything about it? They just decided to go straight into conservatorship. Could there have been action that they could take?
What do you mean?
Of somebody drugging her without her knowledge?
So they did take action, which I do think is an important part of it as well. All of the legal steps in action are very interesting in this case, and they all had purpose, and I think point to the fact that she needed a conservatorship. I don't know if she does now, but that she needed one, and one of them is that they went and got a restraining order against that guy, so they did take steps against him to protect her. But what you don't know is if she said, no, that wasn't happening, I don't want you to get a restraining order, this guy's fine, and then they had proof to say, no, you need a restraining order, and the judge agreed with them, obviously, because they granted a restraining order, which is not easy to do. You can't just go and say, I want a restraining order against you. You have to have proof, you have to have a hearing, evidence, testimony gets put forth before the judge, and the judge makes the decision saying there's a restraining order against you, and it's a high bar to take someone's rights away from them, and that's what a restraining order does. You're now not allowed to move freely wherever you want to go because you can't come around me. It's the same thing with a conservatorship where they're taking away someone's rights, so it's a high bar. But and you never know what would have happened had she not signed off on it. That's a big deal.
But side note, so getting a restraining order is different than pressing charges of a guy who's drugging her without her knowledge.
So here's the problem. Do you know if they can prove that he drugged her?
They could have taken, I mean, if they really thought that it was true, couldn't they have taken her blood? And...
How did they prove he drugged her? It's like an impossible thing. It's the same thing with all these like roofie stuff. It's impossible to figure out who slipped what in her drink when. They would. I mean, it's really hard to prove that stuff. But I think getting a restraining order is proof enough that they proved he was doing something he shouldn't have been doing with her or influencing her to do something.
And he was taking money, like he was taking her money.
I think it said
he
was
like
taking
talked her
control
into
of her house, her finances, and her
So
life.
he was basically trying to be a conservator.
Yeah.
And so it was like...
And she was agreeing to it. That's why...
And so I feel like it was like, you know what? He's using her, and her family was like, no. He's not going to use her. We're going to use her. Yeah. So we're going to get the conservatorship. So now I can make the money that he was... I mean, that's what it seems like. Like, it just seems like everybody has been using her. Nobody has had her best interest. You keep saying best for her. It's in the best interest of her. None of this seems like it is best for her. Like, she seems so miserable,
so do you think she
so
was
sad.
On a good path when Gina was playing her part as the bald lady that was smashing windows and trying to hurt.
No,
I think there were other steps they could have taken though.
I do too, and I have seen other people take worse paths and bad paths, and they don't have all of their rights stripped away from them.
Right,
like she literally has no rights.
I have some questions for you guys.
Okay.
What do you think is in the best interest of Britney Spears right now?
Right now?
Yeah.
Seeing her kids, being able to be around her babies.
That's nothing to do with the conservatorship, but okay. You can be under conservatorship and still see your babies as much as you want.
Get married if she wants.
Okay.
Marry the wrong guy if she wants. How many people marry the wrong people?
Okay, so
I think she should be able to. I think she should be able to be the conservator of her persons. Maybe not her finances, because maybe.
You mean control?
Yes, in control of herself. Okay. Because I think, at least if she can prove. She lives on her own. She obviously can take care of herself. She was doing a Vegas tour successfully. She was on the X Factor. She was working, doing all these things on her own.
She was so weird on the X Factor.
Just because she's
like
weird doesn't mean...
I'm like weird, so now you get all your rights taken away.
I'm not arguing that she needs the conservatorship. I'm just saying I think if it's there, there's a reason that it's there. There's a reason that it continues to be there. But okay, so you think, Gina, that she should have control of her own person, but still have a conservatorship.
At least be able, yes. At least have a.
Not a free Britney activist.
No, I'm saying
you lost the title.
I think she should be in control of her finances, but I'm saying a start, like they should at least look into her being able to make her own decisions.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I mean,
best for Britney.
I just feel like I need you to get your hands on those medical records because it's driving me crazy. I feel like it's unclear. I feel like it's secretive. It's confusing. And I think for a reason. I feel like it's just a way for them to like work the system, keep people from asking questions. No. It's a secret document. There's believe me. Just believe me. There's no way she can make her own decisions.
So
I can't answer the question because I just feel like that's their
trump card.
Their crux. But from what I've seen, aside from the secret medical records, let the girl live her life. Let her be weird. Let her marry the wrong person. Let her spend all her money. Like, how many celebrities blow all their money? They're fine. Her mental health would be better if she was not imprisoned in this life. Like, let her live.
So, I think that... Hold on. I was going to say... So that's a HIPAA violation for me to get the medical records. That's the first thing that
I'm not saying you have to share it on the podcast.
Okay, but for me to get them
you're a
period.
lawyer. Like, go
Lawyers don't just go get whatever they want.
go be her lawyer.
She can't hire me. I'm not a court-appointed lawyer.
Go to Jamie and say that you want.
So anyways, the medical records, I think, would do the opposite of what you think they would do. That's where I think it does. That is where the crux and where this turns is, what do the medical records say and what do they continue to say? Because if the medical records were good for Britney, the conservatorship would be no more. That at any point, if they're like, she's good now, she's capable, she's sane, she's legally competent, let's let her move on, then I think that should be good. Let's transition for a second.
What type of things could that say? Like, what could those medical records say that would warrant a conservatorship?
Suicidal thoughts.
Seriously?
Absolutely. Suicidal thoughts. Or, like we talked about, I don't know if we did that on the podcast. Now I'm starting to mix reality with the podcast. But we talked about how she didn't want to do the Vegas show because she didn't want her dad to make money off of it. She didn't do this because she didn't want people. How far is she willing to go? Or who was it that told me she shaved her head?
Because she didn't want to. People messing with her hair anymore.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
I can't remember if it was you or
she was
Rachel
over it. Yeah.
She was like, I didn't want people to touch my hair. Now what? Now they're not going to make me go on stage. Now they're not going to make me perform. That's why I shaved my head. I shaved it myself. I didn't want them to shave it. Yeah, poor girl. But like, how far do you take that? Is she willing to hurt herself to hurt other people? Is she willing to? I'm just saying, if the medical records say something like that, where she was like, I was so mad at other people, I shaved my head. I was so mad at other people, I hurt myself by not making more money. I was so mad at other people, I was willing to do this. The medical records could say she had certain thoughts that are not healthy for herself and that she should not be able to make these kinds of decisions because of the mental space that she's in.
Do most people in a conservatorship sign off on their conservatorship?
I have no idea. I would say no, because they're usually like in a coma or
that is what I'm saying. I think that there is something to be said for like the people in a conservatorship that physically cannot make decisions for themselves. They cannot. They're
always physically, but physically or mentally.
But like but that's what I mean. Like, they can't say yes or no. Like, they are mentally incapacitated, whatever their illness may be. They can't go to work. They can't perform. They can't sing. I think that there is a difference between them being in a conservatorship, not fighting it, and Britney fully aware of what's going on, knowing that she cannot live.
But it's not just for brain dead people. I mean, that's the problem. Is the mental health aspect of it makes it hard for an outsider that's not looking at what the doctor.
Well, that's why I want to know what things could be in that report.
Well, that's what, okay, 2 questions from that. Suicidal thoughts. How does somebody controlling your life and controlling your money gonna make you not have suicidal thoughts? And B, how would she? Okay, say that in the medical records there was something so damning that like you can't go back. She has a conservator. Now, to get it overturned, how does one prove that she's a completely different person than she was when this medical record came out?
So the medical record could say a lot of things. Like, the suicidal thoughts is part of it. You go to rehab for that. Usually you get better from that. But you have to, I mean, in her case, it was probably a lot more things. It was probably like, she lost touch with reality. She didn't know what was real and what was fake. She was very easily susceptible to things like we've talked about. Like, they have tests for that, where they ask you these questions, or they try to convince her to do something to go a certain way. And if she does it so easily, like an 8-year-old kid or like somebody that's very gullible, then that puts her on a certain track. Yeah. So I don't know what the medical records are saying. I'm not a psychiatrist or psychologist, but I just know that people can come and sit across the table from you and talk to you, and they can tell me about their case and say they want to hire me, and they are legally incompetent. Like, they have been ruled legally incompetent. They cannot make that decision. But that does not mean that they don't have lucid times or moments. That's like a proven fact in the mental health world, is just because you have mental health issues doesn't mean you have them all the time. So that's number one. Number two, the only way to really get out of this conservatorship. So the only way to alter it is conservator dies or conservator steps down for whatever reason, but then there's just a new conservator. The conservatorship doesn't go away. In order to get out of the conservatorship, there's 2 interesting ways, right? So the first way is she proves she doesn't need it anymore, right? And the way she can do that is with doctors, lawyers, under those circumstances and the rules set out. She convinces the judge that she doesn't need it anymore. That's how she gets rid of the conservatorship.
How do you prove that?
You get a doctor to come and evaluate you.
So one evaluation can...
I don't know if it's one. I mean, I'm sure the doctor would have to go through a number of steps in order to prove that she's competent, but that's how you do it, And I would think that if anybody was ever going to get out of it, it would be her, because she's not in a coma or whatever, like we've talked about what the normal ones are. The other way that a conservatorship can dissolve, which is interesting, is if there are no more assets.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so that's what they say, which is funny. It's like and a conservator, the person running the conservatorship, the conservator is her dad. That person has an obligation to try to go get as much support and benefits that they can get for that person. Like they have to go apply for Social Security or Medicare or whatever it may be for the person that's the conservatee. So he can even argue that he's trying to get her these Vegas jobs or whatever because this is a benefit she should get, could add to her assets, which can help her for the rest of her life. So there are different elements to that.
Yeah, it's so sad.
I know.
It's like
I mean, I don't think it's that far-fetched that she would get the conservatorship overturned if she could just convince that she's fine. Like
that lady lawyer said she's never seen it happen.
But she says that's like me saying we've never not gotten money on a car accident case. It's like, yeah, because you can always settle for something. It's like, yeah, if a case goes to crap, usually you call the insurance company, you're like, hey, we'll settle for a little bit. And you said, oh, we won, we settled it. But it's like...
And maybe it's never been done because nobody's ever fought it.
Well, that's what I'm
because
saying.
most people in a conservatorship are not trying to get out of it because they're like, well, I don't need...
It's different. In Florida, it's very similar to like a guardianship. Like you can set up different kinds of guardianships that you've set up.
So is it always monetarily related since you said the assets, or is that just one
I don't know
aspect of it?
That was just one thing that this description of the law said, that it can be dissolved when the assets are gone. The financial conservatorship goes away because now they don't have any more decisions to make.
The documentary said that her dad was making how much money off of her Vegas show?
1.5% of the gross proceeds.
Which was like
$1 million a week.
Yeah.
That's
a lot of money.
Like, so tell me why he would not be...
So he was making that or just controlling it?
Making that. That was his...
He was getting paid for being the conservative?
Yes.
But the reason is, he is like the person, right? So if I'm going to hire you to do something for $1 million a week, you have to read through the contracts, you have to negotiate, go back and forth, figure out what's going to be best for you.
But he strikes me as somebody that was reading through contracts.
He has to do that for her. He has to undertake that for her. Which again, if one of us had a conservator, it'd be fine. They wouldn't make that much money because there's not that many decisions to make. There's a lot of decisions to make for her. There's a lot of time, effort, and complexity to her conservatorship that would not be there when somebody's just in the hospital with a coma. You're just basically dealing with medical decisions and medical bills, and that's it. With her, there's so much more to deal with. Now listen, he could be a scumbag. I'm not defending him.
From what I've heard.
Yeah, whatever. I don't know. But I'm just saying it's not abnormal that the conservator makes money on the conservatorship, especially one with an asset value of $60 million like she has. Anything else? Do you think she's going to get freed? It's a question I have for you activists.
I hope she does. Oh, I have one more question.
Okay.
Do you think that the media and everything that's going on right now with the Free Britney activists has anything to do with or will have any effect on her?
So I would think, like we've talked about, if I was a mental health doctor, I'd want to get involved and evaluate her myself. Here's the problem. Let's say you want to get involved, you evaluate her, and you determine that she is not, that she is legally incompetent. You can't tell anybody that. It's not like you can go out and talk about that. Like, that's all privileged stuff. And so that would never help. And then it's really hard to like force your way in and then get in front of a judge and do all this stuff. And I'm sure that's happened. I'm sure some activists that are psychiatrists or whatever, psychologists, reach out to her lawyer and say, let me come look at her. But then they're going to be biased and they're going to be like, hey, how'd you get involved in the case? I called the lawyer because I wanted to evaluate Britney because I'm a Free Britney activist and this is what I think. The judge has to weigh that and see whether that's a credible witness or not. So that's an issue. I think that one of the issues that I've read a lot about with conservatorships is it's set up for the benefit of the conservatee, right? It's set up that they have to make normal reports to the court, and the court has to see how they're handling the money, what decisions that they're making. The court's supposed to keep their thumb on top of the conservator. But it's like a known fact that mismanagement comes on, negligence happens, even abuse happens in these conservatorships, and it's hard for the court to actually perform its duty in the conservatorship because of how the courts are packed and they're dealing with all these other cases. So if everything seems fine, they just don't want to waste a lot of time with it. So there is a known fact that there is some abuse and negligence and mismanagement of the funds, and even bad decisions being made. I think the media attention will actually be good for her case because I think it'll draw more attention. So judges are people, right? So they are looking at their case list, and when they see Britney Spears on their case list, I'm sure they give it a little bit more scrutiny. They know the public is going to be watching. They know the activists like you guys are going to be out there fighting to free Britney. So I think the media attention will be good if she ever wants to get out of it. I think it'll be good to have the higher scrutiny on it so there's not mismanagement, there's not abuse, there's not negligence in her conservatorship. But only time will tell. We'll see if we get to free Britney at some point.
Well, we've seen what it can do with like Making a Murderer
Yep.
and those podcasts. What's that? The one with Adnan. His case was reopened.
Oh.
Yeah. So we've seen what it can do. So I think it can't hurt.
Let's do it.
All right, so we'll see if Britney gets freed. If you like the After Dark content, like this video. Apparently it's good for the YouTubes and the algorithm. Subscribe to our channel. Let us know in the comments if this is the type of stuff you guys like. It's way too late in the video. Nobody is still watching. But if you are, like it. It helps us with the content. Until next time, thanks for joining me, ladies.
Free Britney.
Free Britney.